This is a true story, one that is famous throughout France. It's the story of an elderly father who, at the age of 72, hired men to kidnap another old man. And even though the court found him guilty of soliciting and kidnapping, public opinion was overwhelmingly on his side. Even the presiding judge expressed sympathy for him. The man he had kidnapped was a German doctor named Krombach, a monster hiding in plain sight who had used his position to assault numerous female patients, yet had managed to evade the law for 3 long decades. The father who brought him down was André Bamberski. As the father of one of the victims, he fought for 30 years, from the age of 42 to 72. It was a battle that cost him everything: his fortune, his family, and his friends. He clashed with the justice systems of multiple countries, but could never get the killer behind bars. In the end, the only people who could deliver the murderer to a French court were the kidnappers André had hired. André Bamberski once had a life most would envy: a beautiful family with a son and a daughter, and a happy marriage. As a successful entrepreneur, he provided his wife with a life of wealth and comfort. But that comfortable life couldn't fill the void in his wife's heart. It was then that their neighbor, a charming and attentive doctor working at the German consulate named Krombach, entered her life. It didn't take long for André to discover his wife's infidelity. He calmly confronted her, telling her that if she was no longer happy, he was willing to let her go. Panicked, his wife swore she would end the affair with Krombach. Wanting to keep the family whole for the children, André chose to forgive her. He decided to move the entire family from Morocco to France, hoping the distance would sever the connection for good. However, no sooner had they settled in France than his wife and Krombach rekindled their affair. By the summer of 1982, André and his ex-wife were long divorced, each living their own separate lives. As he did every year, he sent his son and daughter to Germany to visit their mother. He had no idea it would be the last time he would ever see his daughter alive. A few days later, André received a phone call from his ex-wife. His daughter, Kalinka, had been in an accident in Germany. When he rushed to the scene, he was met with the cold, lifeless body of his child. Krombach explained that Kalinka had complained of a headache from the summer heat, so she took a sedative and went to sleep. The next morning, she was found with no vital signs. As a doctor, he claimed he had done everything he could to save her, but it was too late. André decided to bring his daughter back to France for burial. To transport a body across the border, an autopsy was required by law. Lost in his grief, André agreed. After Kalinka was laid to rest, he received the autopsy report, written in German. It was this document, filled with disturbing inconsistencies, that would ignite his 30-year-long hunt for the truth. The report noted a bruise on his daughter's right arm from an injection and tears in her genital area. Krombach claimed the injection was a prescribed iron supplement, but during his supposed rescue attempt, he had administered a cocktail of drugs with conflicting effects, an extremely bizarre act for any medical professional. Yet, the German coroner's official conclusion was simply cause of death unknown, a clear sign that no serious investigation had been conducted. André was convinced there was something deeply wrong. He consulted a doctor friend who pointed out that the first thing a medical examiner should have checked for was signs of sexual activity. But the report completely avoided the topic. His friend urged him to let it go, to spare himself even greater pain. Cross-border lawsuits were notoriously difficult, especially since Krombach was a man with a stellar reputation and powerful connections in his community. But André's deep love for his daughter made giving up impossible. He traveled to Germany, desperate for answers. But his ex-wife only defended Krombach, claiming the iron injection was just to help their daughter get a tan, and insisting Kalinka had been in her room all night and could not possibly have been assaulted. Realizing he would never get the truth from them, André decided to hire a lawyer in Germany. However, German prosecutors rejected his request to reopen the case, citing insufficient evidence. In desperation, André printed flyers exposing the suspicious details and protesting the injustice, only to be arrested for disturbing the peace and defamation. He was forced to return to France. Back in France, André taught himself law. He discovered that he could file an international lawsuit as a private citizen in a higher court. A lawyer, moved by his relentless determination, took on the case. In 1985, the trial began in a Paris court, but Krombach refused to appear. André's ex-wife also refused to testify on her own daughter's behalf. To get the key evidence they needed, the lawyer requested a second autopsy. The results were horrifying. Kalinka's pelvic organs had been removed. The crucial evidence had been intentionally destroyed. And the only doctor present during that first autopsy was Krombach. Years later, after constant pressure from the French authorities, the German officials finally handed over the tissue samples from the first autopsy. A French medical examiner confirmed that Kalinka had died of asphyxiation after being put into a deep coma by a drug injection. In 1995, with the evidence now undeniable, a French court held a trial in absentia. Krombach was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison. By this time, 13 years had passed since Kalinka's death. André wasn't satisfied with the sentence, but at least justice, long delayed, had finally arrived. He promised his family he would try to return to a normal life. But just as he was on vacation with his girlfriend, a call came from his lawyer. Due to political pressure from Germany, France had suspended the international arrest warrant for Krombach. The killer was still enjoying life with his family, while André's daughter lay in a cold grave. The news shattered him. He now understood that a piece of paper from a court was not the end of the fight. André turned to the one weapon he had left: public opinion. He contacted journalists, who published a massive feature on the case, with a headline that directly called out the weakness of the French justice system. Under a storm of public pressure, France finally issued the arrest warrant to Interpol. But officials privately admitted that Germany would never extradite Krombach. Soon after, André learned that Krombach was on trial in Germany for assaulting another female patient. He dropped everything and went to attend the hearing. In the courtroom, he listened as a victim, a young girl, described being injected with a drug by Krombach. She was fully conscious, but her body was paralyzed, unable to move as he assaulted her. For André, hearing her testimony was like witnessing his own daughter's final moments. His heart broke all over again. However, because Krombach cleverly argued the encounter was consensual, the court ultimately just revoked his license to practice medicine in Germany and gave him a suspended sentence, which was essentially the same as letting him walk free. André's life now had only one purpose: the hunt for Krombach. His girlfriend, after standing by him for years, finally chose to leave. He didn't try to stop her. From that day on, he could focus on his mission without any distractions. He traveled to borders all across Europe, handing out copies of Krombach's international arrest warrant. In 1998, Krombach was arrested in Austria. But under pressure from Germany, Austria released him back to his home country. André fell into despair. He sued the justice departments of multiple countries at the European Court of Human Rights for dereliction of duty, but his letters were simply ignored. Even the lawyer who had fought by his side for years was ready to give up. For the next 8 years, André sold his company and moved to Germany. He spent his days continuing to hand out flyers while searching for Krombach's whereabouts. It wasn't until 2008 that he finally located Krombach's residence. By now, the statute of limitations on the case was about to expire. Out of options and running out of time, André used the last of his money to hire a few strong men. They abducted Krombach, drove him across the border into France, and then André immediately called the police and turned himself in. The event created a media firestorm. With the help of top lawyers and the press, Krombach was finally put in a French prison. Prosecutors contacted André's ex-wife one last time. Faced with the testimony from numerous other victims, she finally broke. At long last, 30 years after his daughter's death, the killer faced his punishment. Krombach was sentenced to 15 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter, though the sexual assault charge could not be proven. As for André Bamberski himself, he was found guilty of kidnapping and given a 1-year suspended sentence. They say a father is the one who will always stand behind you, ready to fight for you. No matter if he's in the prime of his life or in his twilight years, he will give everything he has for you.